Welcome in, Loons fans, to another edition of the Matchday Preview. Jonathan Harrison here, joined by Manny Lagos once again. Manny, beautiful day. Good day to talk some Loon soccer and MLS. Let's jump into it, Manny. How you doing?
I mean, obviously, I would have liked to come into the show with a big home win,
Yep.
but it didn't happen. It was still a special night in terms of the crowd, and it definitely was a dramatic game. But back at it. We've got a big road game now, and 24 points to play for. And there was some positives I'm sure we'll go into later in the show. But like I said, the sun is up. Oh, not I guess not. The sun's not really up. It's
Clouds are away.
Yeah, the clouds are away. It's not quite as hot. We're officially kind of leaking towards fall.
Yeah, thankfully the heat is going away too.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of it. So, all right, let's jump into this. We got plenty to discuss across the league. We will discuss the 3-2 loss to Seattle coming up a little bit later in the show. Let's jump into around the league, though. Leagues Cup action. Columbus beats LAFC 3-1. Outstanding performances once again from Cucho Hernandez. But Columbus just keep doing what Columbus do and just beating LAFC in finals.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly was a redundant, championship matchup, but it was a compelling game. I mean, it had a lot of things I was not expecting in the game. I start with just LAFC tactics kind of confounded me a little bit. I hadn't seen them decide to play so deep against a team, probably in the history of their franchise. They really started out that game deciding to play a back five and kind of hole up right at the top of the 18, which it was just weird to see a team of that caliber that usually kind of loves to win the ball in the final third and repress and counter press to play that way. And I think it set a tone for Columbus getting a good rhythm and kind of being up at halftime. And LAFC regrouped and played a better competitive second half. But what a finish and what a deserving result for Columbus.
Absolutely. And they just continue to impress under Wilfred Nancy as their head coach. It's been an impressive run for Columbus. A question I do have coming out of this: Olivier Giroud scores in the 57th minute to equalize, but then Columbus obviously score the 2 goals in stoppage time. How do you think he fits into how LAFC want to play? I know you mentioned that you didn't expect them to sit back as much as they did. Do you think that was because of how Giroud fits into that system, or do you think they're going to change how that looks as the season goes along?
Yeah, I think they're going to go back a little bit more press and counter press and try to play a higher line defensively. I think this was a reaction to the worst loss in the history of their club earlier in the year at home against Columbus 5-1. And they're trying to do something different to see if it could help kind of spark their team with a defend deep and counterattack. Obviously, we have Bouanga. On paper, it seems awesome. You got somebody like Bogusz and Bouanga wide, and then you got Drew in the middle, but it just didn't work out that way on the day. And like I said, they had to make changes at halftime. And, a little bit going into our Seattle game, if you start slow, it's hard to get back into games. You can, but it's hard to do it for 90 minutes. So certainly for me, the story wasn't necessarily the LFC tactics in the end, though. I think the story is Wilfred Nancy and the Columbus Crew and just how good they've been and how good he has been as a coach. I mean, there is no doubt he has been transformational for that Columbus Crew in terms of how they compete, starting a backup goalie. He's making players that I think are fringe starters on other teams throughout MLS in the history of their career, starters and impact starters. He's taken a player like Cucho Hernandez and has evolved him to be all in by, really they had some stressful moments, even suspending him a little bit in the season to make sure he was there for the team. And he was unbelievable. And I think there's some argument to be made that he's the most impactful player outside of Messi in the league. And then you got somebody like Chris Ramirez, somebody who's near and dear to our club's heart and has been an amazing career here. A little bit of a journeyman afterwards, but always impactful in scoring. And now he's like a cult hero in Columbus in terms of just, once again, Wilfred saying this is a guy who's too special to leave off the field, which again, I think is near and dear to Minnesota fans' hearts. But it's really cool to see that happen and the success he's had in 2 championships now in the last year there. So hats off to Columbus. There's no doubt about it. I mean, the style they use, what they're playing, it just really is next level.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you think they've been able to turn it around so quickly? Because the year before Nancy took over, they were 8th place. They missed the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. Then we know what they did last year, winning MLS Cup, and now they're considered one of the best teams in probably this in this region. with how they play. There's talk of them being one of the most pleasing to watch MLS teams ever to play. How have they turned it around so quickly under Nancy?
Well, again, I think this league you have moments where you have to kind of reassess, and we're in that moment ourselves here right now in Minnesota, and they didn't make the playoffs. I think it was 2 years in a row
Yeah.
before they said, "Hey, we have to do something different." And I do think it does start with Wilfred Nancy, hiring the right coach who can really build a culture and a system. And again, the thing about MLS is you do have to find the value and the talent and the quality on the field. But the fringe players and coaching up is a term that we use a lot in terms of the term du jour right now. And there's no doubt. I mentioned that there's players on that field that were castaways that are now close to being all-stars in this league.
Yeah.
You have to give the head coach so much credit for creating a culture of bringing guys in that believe in a system, want to work individually and collectively and as a unit to become the best version of themselves, both individually, but even more importantly, so the group looks the way they do. Camacho, Farsi, like these guys who are still considered maybe not even starters on other MLS teams are having all-star years. And really, like I said, it starts with, I think, Wilfred Nancy. I think it's an alignment in their front office that they've done a great job of giving the support of that staff, the ability to do what they believe the vision is. And then the execution is probably roll up your sleeves every day. Playing soccer and winning on the field means that every day in training, every day getting ready for your games, and then executing are all things that have to come together.
Yeah, they're an exceptionally deep team as well. They've got two or three solid players at every position, it feels like, when you look at their depth chart. Another team that has quickly turned it around, Colorado Rapids, qualifying for the CONCACAF Champions Cup after beating Philadelphia on penalties, 3-1 on penalties, 2-2 in regulation. Congratulations to them. Excellent run. Chris Armas really has quickly shaped them into a team that he can be very proud of.
Yeah, listen, there's a lot of good, honest debate about the Leagues Cup and its relevancy and where it should be within the season and how we kind of take a break and have this tournament. And,
Yeah.
Certainly it's a little bit harder for us to be out so early and it's out of sight, out of mind, and we got to get ready for our league. But ultimately, there are some massive, massive implications for making a run in the League Cup. And Colorado just showed an example of teams that maybe are always at the top of the table or can't qualify for CONCACAF Champions League by winning the U.S. Open Cup or MLS Cup. This is a great opportunity. And for them to make a run in the tournament, take the third place game incredibly seriously, and now are in the CONCACAF Champions League. What a turnaround for them. I mean, this already will be a success for their season. There's no doubt, just by this tournament and getting to this extra tournament that they get to be 1 degree from potentially playing against some of the top teams in the world and in Europe. Credit to Chris Armas, credit to Rapids. They had to go to Philly to do it as well. So it wasn't easy, but again, this is a good example of the potential of the Leagues Cup in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Other notes of teams qualifying: Sporting Kansas City, excuse me, beating Indy 11 in the U.S. Open Cup semifinals. They'll go on to take on LAFC in the finals of that after LAFC beat Seattle 1-0. And Sporting Kansas City qualify for CONCACAF Champions Cup as well, despite a less than stellar season for them. Congratulations to them. Other MLS notes: Inter Miami and beat FC Cincinnati in a battle of 1 versus 2 in the Eastern Conference. 2-0 Inter Miami, Luis Suarez scoring in the first and 6 minutes, I believe, in a very physical and controversial match, Manny.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I got to be honest. I do think Cincinnati, they're coming to town soon, and it's our next home game on September 18th. Massive game for us,
Yeah.
And I think they've been dropped a little bit in terms of their level and their own confidence about getting results. Because for this one, for me, to give up 2 early goals away, get a red card, and still not be able to get back in the game, I think they've got to leave feeling a little bit disappointed. And the credit to Miami, like I said, we don't know when Messi will be back. We all know that Copa America injury was going to be serious and was going to be some time. There's still some rumors now that he's getting close. But for them to kind of have such a big win and keep going in the league and getting close to the sport issue without Messi there, massive result for them. Credit to them. And again, I think Cincy will leave a little bit kicking themselves.
Yeah, Cincinnati now dropped 4 straight in league play going back to July 17th. It's been quite a disappointing run for a team that has been really good. They've now also dropped 2 straight on the road for, I think, the team with the best road record in the league. Cincinnati have been excellent away from Cincinnati this season, 9-3-1 on the season away from Cincinnati. It's been incredible what they've been able to do this season. Just a poor run of form that they'll look to turn it around against Montreal this weekend. Speaking of Montreal, they just had New England put 5 past them. Is this Caleb Turner finally putting his marks on New England, or is just Montreal in that bad of shape at this point?
I think it could be a little bit of both. Again, this is the time of the year where, you're kind of seeing groups that are building towards something and trying to get momentum, whether it's this year or next year. And so anytime you go and put 5 away, you got to say, hey, there's something good happening there. And particularly even Montreal, which it tends to be a tough place to play. You have to leave the country. They do a good job with their environment and atmosphere there. So for me, a really impressive result for Caleb in New England. And it's probably still TBD to see how their run-in is, but they've got to be feeling good after a result like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe the wildest game of the weekend, Portland 4, St. Louis 4, 8 goals scored in this one. And I think just about half of them, or most of them, scored in the second half. A couple of late goal, or at least a late goal by Evander in stoppage time, in the ninth minute of stoppage time. This one was wild, and it feels like Portland certainly does this once or twice a year, it seems.
Yeah, and obviously this is another one for us. We've got St. Louis twice now to finish out our run of
Yeah.
8 games. So it was one to follow in terms of seeing how St. Louis is and where their trajectory is. So, in one sense, you could say, a nice point on the road against Portland in a tough place to play where Portland's been good at home. Another sense, up 2-0, up by a goal late, you still couldn't see it out and get the 3 points.
Yeah.
Tells me that, they're still, the reality of their season has been that it's been a struggle. They had such a great year last year, and they really shocked the league, and it was so impressive. And this year, with firing a coach, and they've been up and down with their form. We do have to be aware, though, that going on the road and getting a point in Portland is pretty impressive, and scoring 4 goals away is pretty impressive. So it'll be 2 big games, home and away, against them coming up over the next couple months here. I think we got them on decision day, maybe, is our final game. So hopefully that'll be a really relevant one for us. Wild, though. I love MLS. I love these games. Yeah. I love the drama of them. Again, both teams had quality in the field, and it showed. And it's such a cool league that you get games like these, and you get quality players contributing to such excitement.
When you look at St. Louis, you mentioned shocking the league last year, having an excellent debut season, and now they just have struggled mightily this season, sitting 13th place, 24 points out of 26 games. That's less than a point per game after what they did last year. When you look at what they do on the field and what they've done this season, what happened? How did it drop off so quickly for them?
Yeah, it's hard to say, exactly. I still think being consistent was their MO last year. They're balanced defensively. They found goals, to me, mid to the second part of the second half, and really took teams around where they really didn't get goals early. And I feel like this year they've just been a little bit softer defensively, and then eventually that creeps into your offense. So, again, if you're kind of leaking goals defensively, putting pressure on the offense to score goals, and eventually it kind of cracks a little bit. So they've made some moves in this transfer window. They've obviously, like I said, had a coaching change as well. So they're in this period now where they're going to try to make a run and see where their season ends up. But it certainly was a drop. But at the end of the day, I think if I put on my MLS hat, it still is in the mode of what a great story. To me, this is one of the most historic, if not the most historic, soccer city in this country. And the start and entry in MLS with their fan base, their stadium, the energy they have, it's all, for me, still a glass half full kind of couple years for them. But the reality of this league is it's tough, and you got to always keep evolving. You always got to keep figuring out how you're going to be competitive from one year to the next.
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch their season. And as you mentioned, MLS just continues to show its parity up and down the league. We'll talk about San Jose's 2-0 win over Real Salt Lake in a little bit when we preview this weekend's game for Minnesota United against San Jose. But I thought that was one of the more shocking results of the weekend, considering how both teams came back into league play after the way they exited league play into Leagues Cup play. So it'll be interesting to see and discuss San Jose coming up. Just because the Loons are away doesn't mean you have to watch the match from home. With Loons Watch Spots presented by Coors Light, you can find a piece of that Allianz Field atmosphere at some of your favorite Twin Cities locations. Check out the full list of locations and upcoming watch parties at MNUFC.com/Loons Watch Spots. First, let's talk about the Seattle game. 3-2 loss for Minnesota. Before we jump into the goals and the debut performances and all the standout performances for Minnesota, let's talk about our general thoughts about this game, because it felt like this was the most competitive that we've seen Minnesota against Seattle in the 3 tries this season, but it still just wasn't enough because it was just always those little mistakes that Seattle was there to capitalize on.
Yeah, it's it is tough to take as a fan,
Yeah.
as an employee of the club, that this is a club that psychologically we have not figured out, and there's no two ways around it at this point. Every game is always going to be different. How you navigate to walk off the field with 3 points, particularly at home, is massively important. And like I said to start the podcast, you are a little gutted that we didn't navigate
Yeah.
a way to find a way to win this game. The game unfolded in a way that I think we kind of had a similar mode. We had new guys coming in, and that was exciting. We had a nice break with the Leagues Cup to prepare for the game. And sometimes all those things on paper seem like it's going to be great. And I think it took us a half to really get going in the game. I thought we just started out slow.
Mm-hmm.
Really for me, it was more about losing individual duels early so we can win the ball in good spots and get some possession and chances. And we just didn't. And the individuals that need to do that can help the group by just winning some battles and then getting going and get some confidence. And I just felt like that first half we just were a little bit sluggish in terms of creating chances and winning battles and getting going. And then when you give up goals, now you're in a little bit of a situation where you're trying to fight back, and you have a lot of energy, both mentally and physically, to continually get back in games. And so I just start with that. That start for us was a little bit too slow. I mean, we got to figure out a way to get going in those first halves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was the big note during the match itself, that when we broke for halftime, Dan looked at me, we took off our headsets, and we said that just wasn't good enough in the first half. Second half finishes up and like, okay, that was a lot better. You feel like there should have maybe been a point coming out of that one at least. I know Eric Ramsey said similar in the post-match press conference, that feels that the second half performance was a lot better than the first half performance. Overall, Loons edge possession just a little bit by 52%. Outshot Seattle 23-14. Both teams had 5 on target. And I think this stat stood out to me the most. Loons completed over 100 more passes than Seattle. I don't think I've seen that many times with how the Loons have played this season. Was there for you some tactical switches in how Eric Ramsey set up the team and how the team operated with Jefferson Diaz and Kelvin Yeboah in the squad, and with how they had so much time to develop over the past couple of weeks under Eric Ramsey?
Well, certainly. I mean, we play like a 3-5-2 or 5-3-2, depending on if we had to defend deep or if we're getting
Mm-hmm.
numbers higher up the field. And that lended to kind of seeing Pookie and Yeboah play together. And again, I thought they're effective at somewhat in the first half, but we weren't winning enough duels to really have them be involved in the game. And it really took a great play by Kelvin Yeboah, I think, against the run of play or just no real chances, out of nothing, to create a PK. And actually, he wanted to take it, which I thought was a really cool personality trait. It was like, I drew the PK. I'm a forward. I'm going to take this and finish it and tie this game up. And I thought that was a really nice kind of personal kind of moment. And obviously, the second goal was outstanding by him. And I think we'll talk about the second half and his goal in a second. But I do think tactically, it was nice to see a midfield of Robin, Will, and Load. And I think that probably lends to some good passing, some good decision making, and why we had maybe more numbers in the passing. I still always look at those stats and I'm like, I want to see how many of those are forward passing and breaking lines a little bit more, because if we're going backwards or sideways, it doesn't quite match up with the tenor of the game. I thought it was probably a little more even in terms of the possession, in terms of like effective passing, which means it was a close game. And it means that both teams, at times had good moments to score goals, and Seattle got 3 and we only got 2. But I will say the output in those first 20 minutes of that second half, I really liked. I really liked
Mm-hmm.
coming out of the halftime, not only getting the tying goal, but just having some really good movements, some good moments, some good energy. which is why I think that we got hit hard when they scored because I think it was against the run and play a little bit where we were having some of our better moments in the game.
Yeah, I kind of want to go through these goals and break them down one by one because you look at the first goal by Jordan Morris, and we can talk about the debuts. We can kind of layer them in here. Jefferson Diaz makes a pass that I think when he looks back on it in tape that he'd want that one back just across a high cross field pass that kind of puts Robin Lod in no man's land. He slips and that gives Obed Vargas a nice area and a nice space to layer thread in this pass to Jordan Morris, who just times his run excellently and just chips Dane St. Clair. And again, you'd want a better pass from Jefferson Diaz or maybe just a different pass. But overall, I think his performance was fine. I think there's some questions of, I think there's things that you'd want differently and better from him, but you expect that from a defender making his first appearance in MLS. And I think there was enough there that you can be excited about what he can bring to this squad.
Yeah, I like how you finished that. Yeah, I mean, again, we're going to make mistakes individually, collectively every game. There's no doubt we don't want to lose the ball in bad spots
Yeah.
to create a chances and a chance for Seattle to go forward. I thought Seattle was ruthless on it.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we gave the ball a bad spot, and they had a great tempo to kind of get after us, and we were just caught a little bit reacting a little late to the lost ball, to the turnover, and I think a lot of our players would want to have that one back and push our lineup right after we lost it, make sure we got our line covered, and we can't allow Jordan to get in behind us. And so ultimately, there's a little bit of putting our hand up, making sure we kind of grow with that. And then the second one is a credit to Seattle. And individually for Diaz, this is another example of this is why it takes time. We had new players in the lineup. It's going to take time for the gel. Obviously, we wanted the gel right away. We only have now 8 games left at the
Yeah.
time 9. But that is kind of unrealistic to say, oh, this group's going to be perfect from get-go. Again, it's going to take some time for the gel, and this is the kind of adversity, ironically, that we have to deal with. Hey, it's not going to be easy, and ultimately, we are going to turn the ball over in bad spots. Every player does it, and how we react and how we make sure we're not giving up good chances or limiting them is super important. And obviously, Seattle did a great job of really hurting us on that turnover.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the second goal for Seattle, we'll talk about Kelvin Yeboah here in a second. The second goal from Seattle, just a long cross from Albert Rusnak on to find the head of Jackson Reagan, who's 6'6", just towers over everybody on pretty much every soccer field, and he just heads it across the net into the back of the net. But Kelvin Yeboah, in between those two goals, scores his first goal for the club, and as you said, wanted to take the penalty, drew the penalty in the first place. Yanmar Andrade kind of kicking through the back of Yeboah's leg, and Yeboah steps up, does a nice little stutter step that kind of draws Stefan Fry to make a decision, and then Yeboah just goes the opposite way and slots into the back of the net. Excellent debut for Yeboah, and we can talk about his second goal as well.
Yeah. I thought the first goal was really clever and brave, would be my view of it. That was a 50-50 ball.
Mhm.
And the only way for him to draw that penalty was to win the 50-50 ball and know that he was going to get kicked in the leg. And
Yeah,
again, that's part of this sport. I always tell people I think you're done playing when you shy away from taking fouls that help your team win. And to me, that was a really brave moment where he saw the 50-50 ball. He saw that Yamar probably could have cleared that in a different way, but decided to kind of swing his leg through. He's like, I'm going to get there first. And, I think VAR had to look at it, but to me, it was a PK.
yeah,
Ultimately, you can't kick guys in the back of the leg if they win the ball first. So I think it was just a really cool, great, brave, clever play by him, and then a nice, kind of calm finish. So really good and exciting to see him get off the mark. And then obviously the second half, I think the one thing I'd say about Jackson Reagan's goal is just for the fans out there in terms of like the small moments of soccer. We gave up a corner instead of a throw, and sometimes 99 out of 100 times it doesn't mean anything until it does. So it's
yeah,
one of the examples of little things in this sport. Everything has a potential to mean something, which is why I love the sport so much and why I love the details of it so much. And then ultimately, a second phase off a corner kind of goal is hard to take, but we do have to give credit to the header. I
yeah,
mean, the timing and the power and the placement was outstanding. This was a really big time header where Dane really did not have a chance, and the timing, Diaz really could not get up and meet challenge because his timing was so good on the header. So credit to Seattle as well for creating the chance and for Jackson Reagan to crush it. So and like I said, that second half coming out, starting well, creating chances, and then just a great little run off the shoulder by Yeboah, great little ball by Will Trapp. I love the first touch, and again, for his non-dominant foot to have such a clever finish, very impressive. I mean, what a debut to have 2 goals, and that second one to be really world class was really fun to watch.
Yeah, you look up that goal and you look up the definition of scoop, and they'll be right next to each other because it's just an incredible scooping score for Kelvin Yeboah. And you mentioned the pass from Will Trapp. I also like the pass in from Hassani Dotson to Will Trapp that
Sure.
splits, that's just clears three Seattle defenders to get to Will Trapp, and then Trapp makes the excellent threaded pass in between the two defenders for Seattle. And you saw that on the night that Yeboah was constantly just targeting that area in between Andrade and Jackson Reagan. He was trying to make those runs in between those guys, and I love seeing that from the new number 9 for Minnesota, is finding those spaces and targeting them time after time, trying to get the passes into him on those runs.
Yeah, like I said, it's really nice to have a signing that debut is 2 goals. Like I said, we would have
Yeah.
liked to have a 3 points or even a point, but ultimately, um, what a great debut and what a fun night for our Minnesota fans who are outstanding again, by the way. I cannot tell you how awesome Allianz Field was Saturday night once
Yeah.
again, and how gutted we are when we don't walk out the field with 3 points and sing a Wonderwall. But it is just such a special place, and I know we're effusive about it all the time, but it's because it's genuine. The place was buzzing Saturday night. It was a great showcase on national TV, and you couldn't be more proud of the stadium and our fans right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, Yeboah's debut, as you mentioned, ruined by a third goal from Seattle. Albert Rusnak just taking advantage of a poorly timed slip by Robin Lod. Obviously, you never want to have that happen in the first place, but when it happens right in front of the box, and Albert Rusnak's on the ball, who's done this time and time again in his MLS careers, making these key runs, making these key moments, and just drilling in long shots into the back of the net, just finds the bottom corner where Dane St. Clair wasn't going to touch it. Just an excellent moment for Albert Rusnak, but just you can't have those plays happen, can't have these second, third phase moments keep happening and expect to try and win games.
Yeah, you're right. Another one off a set piece, a second phase, and the hard thing for me is I've got the gray hair. He did that when he was playing RSL against us as
Yeah.
well. He had a goal very, very similar against the grain. It's one of those ones where you're like, oh, does that have enough pace? But because it's going against the grain and it's placed so well, it does. And like I said, it hit us hard, and I think we tried to get back in the game afterwards. But again, we've already mentally and physically battled from being down twice. It's really hard to ask to do that a third time, and we couldn't quite get there. But it was a nice response, and there was some really nice moments in the game that we should take not only for this year, but for the excitement of what we're going to be building in the future. And there's no doubt, for these last 8 games, hopefully we get excited about the moments that we did well and use that in the adversity of what we want to try to do to make sure we make the playoffs this year.
Yeah. We've talked about the second half a couple times now and how it just was better. What was it, just the energy that was different for Minnesota, or did Eric Ramsey switch some things up in the second half for Minnesota to come out and battle a little bit better? It seemed like they were winning balls a little bit more and were a little bit more dangerous in the second half. Was it just the energy that the players needed in the second half? Oh,
Well, I
that they
certainly think
didn't display?
tactically, we didn't make a lot of changes, so it had to
Yeah.
be the mentality. So I think it was simplifying, winning duels and battles, and getting guys higher up the field with the balls in good spots so we can get forward, and then repressing and pressing again to do that again over and over. So for me, the tactical changes came a little bit later, and those were probably partly because of fatigue or partly because it was a hot day. I don't think people realized it was a lot hotter than people
Yeah.
realized. We were just starting to get into our warm phase, and Sunday and Monday were insanely hot. Uh, and then we started to make some tactical moves, and obviously those didn't quite work as well as they had for Eric this year, Eric Ramsey. I mean, I think there's a few things there he might want to have a little bit back, or maybe save an extra sub just in case we did go down a goal, or maybe be a little bit more aggressive with offensive subs to see if we could get the win. So, but ultimately, those are the big moments where they change games. And again, I thought mid through the second half is where we kind of did a few things a little bit tactically different, and we couldn't quite get there in the end.
Couple of my final thoughts on this match. First time the Loons have scored multiple goals in or against Seattle in a league game. First time they've done that since the Western Conference final back in 2020. So again, just trying to find those moments of positivity that you can build on, and getting multiple goals against a team that's been your bogey team that we talked about last week, that just constantly has Minnesota's number. That can be nice to build off of going down the stretch over the final 8 games. I thought Hassani Dotson, I know some
Yep.
people online didn't think he had a good game. I thought he had a great game. I thought some of the runs that he made an excellent run. I believe in the first half, where he just basically dribbled through everybody and just created a dangerous chance out of nothing. He was excellent in some of the passes he made, especially on the second goal for Yeboah. I thought he was outstanding in that 3-man midfield.
Yeah, I really think he's comfortable playing that eight position where he's a two-way. He can use his
Yeah.
physicality. He can go and kind of press and squeeze that allows the rest of the team to get up. And even if he doesn't win the first ball, it tends to lead to somebody else winning the ball because he does close with such a kind of hunger to try to win it. Um, and I think you're right. I thought he put in a really, really good shift overall. Like I said, aside from our entire group of the first 10 or 15 minutes, I thought he particularly like said, "Hey, I'm going to run for 90 minutes," and he really did that well. I thought he really had a focus and a drive that I hadn't seen in a couple months in terms of for him individually. And on the flip side, it's another reminder that one of the Seattle strengths is their continuity.
Yeah.
This is a group that's been together for a lot of years and has really knows each other and knows how to deal with the adversity of a game. And I like to remind people within the context of watching some historic stuff. I do think there's two players on that field for Seattle, and they're Americans that I really respect and think have had great MLS careers. Certainly Jordan Morris, as somebody who's done really well against us, but his speed and his ability to finish the way he did against us, outstanding. He is a
Yeah.
threat over the top all the time. He's got that great burst, and then obviously he's a forward that can show some class and finishing. The other guy didn't really have that great of a game, but I still think he's one of the bigger unsung heroes in MLS history, and that's Christian Roldan.
Absolutely.
Game in and game out, this guy puts everything he has into the field. He's not always the physically biggest guy. He's certainly not the fastest guy. He's not even the most technical guy, but combining all three and playing in a way that's for the good of them, it's another example of somebody that I enjoy from a competitive side, watching and admiring somebody that's getting the most out of what they do and what they do in their career.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that we talked about it earlier on this season, that MLS teams just kind of need these guys to build around and have on their roster to be successful. And Christian Roldan, as we've seen throughout the years in, I think, the anonymous athletic polls, that if you're going to build around anybody in MLS, a lot of general managers, sporting directors always choose Christian Roldan because of what he provides for a team. And you see that week in and week out. Yeah, he wasn't too impactful on Saturday, but you can still feel his presence and his impact on games, even if it's not coming in on the score sheet. And he's one of those players that you just look at and watch every week, and you're in awe of how he just kind of plays and manages through games and helps his team out every week.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you 100%. So again, looking back, very even game overall.
Mm-hmm.
Tough to get down 3 times a game and get a result. But some nice individual moments. Kelvin Aboy with the debut, outstanding. Our response to kind of being down twice, I really, really enjoyed that. And I thought, there's some exciting things. I have 2 debuts from the transfer window, and keep going. We got Pereira still coming in here pretty soon. Not sure he's going to be available for this weekend when we go to San Jose, but certainly I would assume after that, particularly with the international break, by the time we go to St. Louis mid-September, we should have our full complement of our roster post-transfer window.
Yeah. So that moves us on to the San Jose match coming up late night this Saturday, 9:30 p.m. kickoff. You can join Dan Terra or myself on 1500 ESPN, 9 p.m. pre-match show. That game also available on MLS Season Pass this Saturday, 9:30 p.m. Central Time for that one. So stay up late, get your coffee in late so you can stay up and watch Minnesota United take on San Jose, who went into the Leagues Cup break in a down bit of form, coming off a 2-0 loss to Minnesota. But they had some impressive performances in Leagues Cup, notably getting a 5-0 win over Necaxa in Leagues Cup. And they were impressive, and kind of it seems like they've carried on that momentum into Leagues play, getting a 2-0 win over Real Salt Lake on Saturday. An impressive game there. Christian Espinoza scoring in the 20th minute, Pellegrino scoring in the 33rd minute, and San Jose kind of holding on to that lead throughout the rest of the 90 minutes. An impressive game to come back and kickstart their latter half of the season.
Yeah, it's definitely a different team than we played right before Leagues
Yep.
Cup. This is a team that found something as a unit together. They seem more balanced on defense and offense. They seem to be a little bit more 90-minute focus. So it's a massive challenge for us this weekend. It's a must win, obviously, for us to really push ourselves with 3 home games and 5 away, and playing against the last place team in the Western Conference. It's a big game, and it's a big game because we need the win. And like you said, Christian Espinoza is really, to me, their danger guy. He's somebody that just loves to run up and down that wing and create havoc, either shooting and scoring or getting the end line and crossing it. I always remind people that we do have a native Minnesotan who runs their midfield and is their captain. Jackson Ewell has carved out a great MLS career at San Jose, and he's always somebody that we have to watch out for in terms of like really controlling that midfield. And then, they've added this guy Hernan Lopez, who's been up and down, but on his day he can be very, very dangerous. And then Pellegrino is another one who's been up and down, but he has scored goals. Like he's got 6 goals in the year, and he scored last weekend. And we can't discount going to RSL, which has been one of the tougher places to play this year. Shutting them out and getting a 2-0 win means they're going to be coming back home with a lot of confidence. So,
Yep.
Will not be an easy one for us this weekend, and I think it makes sure that we have to be ready for a team that's hungry to get a result at home.
They've been an interesting team this year because you can see clearly there's talent on the field for them, and especially in the attack. As you mentioned, Espinoza, he's got 4 goals, 11 assists this season. He had I think double digits last year, if I remember correctly. You've got Jeremy Obasi, who's had double digit goals in seasons past and just hasn't found that form this year. You mentioned Hernan Lopez, just 4 goals, 2 assists this season. Amal Pellegrino leads their team in 6 goals. So they've clearly got the talent in the attack. They just haven't been able to put it together this season. But now it seems like the Loons are catching them at the wrong time. And it'll be certainly interesting to see how this new look defense for Minnesota with Jefferson Diaz in there in that 3-man back line handles all the attacking threat that San Jose poses this weekend. What's changed since, I guess, a couple games ago in league play that we saw from the last time we saw them? Has Ian Russell done things differently with San Jose, setting them up differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's set them up a little bit differently. I think the changing coach has led to a little bit tougher, grittier team. Like I said, I always felt like they played in spells well, but they didn't necessarily kind of fight for 90 minutes. And I think he's got them fighting for 90 minutes now, which means defensively they seem a little bit more hungry and organized to play well for 90 minutes. And offensively, he's been making some subs, and being honest, sometimes I'll sub Lopez out if he doesn't have the legs or can't contribute. Pellegrino as well, he'll take him off. So I think there's some little bit more kind of ruthless subbing going on for him too. So if you're not playing well, I'm going to sub you out. And so ultimately, I still think it's too early to say that they've been consistently winning yet.
Yeah.
But for us to win, we have to be the ones that are consistent on both sides of the ball. We have to be hungry and ready to play good defensively, because they do, like you said, have some guys who quality hurt us if we're not really organized as a group of 11 defending well. And then on the flip side, we've got to be hungry to get numbers forward, get in the box, create chances, and ultimately really think about how we're going to, kind of build out a road game and a road plan that gets 3 points, which isn't easy to do, because in MLS, it's very hard to win on the road. And it's even harder against a team that's just won on the road and they're coming back home with some confidence.
You think for Minnesota, it's another 2-man front up top with Yeboah and whoever else Eric Ramsey decides to put up there, or is there going to be a body moved back into the midfield to help kind of the transition play on the road?
Well, it's hard to say. Certainly there's options now with Tani back. Hopefully, It looks like he's going to be back. Obviously, you got Troy Sapuki, you've got Yeboah, you've got Bongi, you've got Sang Bin. So you've got some options between, the 3-5-2 you played over the weekend, which I'm sure there's elements he liked. I think there's elements in the first half he didn't. So you could think about a 3-4-3 where you're just pressing a little bit higher with 3 guys up top. I think obviously the midfield, there's some confidence with Load and Asani and Trapp that we all really like. So the biggest thing I can say is, like, tactically, Eric has a lot of options going into this, how he wants to approach this road game. And he wants to think about how we want to get after them while making sure we don't give up chances. Because ultimately, we got to make sure we're tight defensively. Because I still think with San Jose, things open up when they're not creating chances.
Yeah. So put on your coaching hat for a second. Tani Oluwaseyi hopefully back this weekend from injury. We saw what Yeboah did in that game against Seattle this last weekend. We know what Tani's been doing this season and being consistently goal dangerous. How do you fit those two guys together up top? Do you move Tani out wide, or do you just go with the two forward system and keep them up top and keep them pressed high?
I would answer that like I just did before, Jonathan. I think both are great depending on where Eric sees the game going tactically. Like I said, you've got, I think, three quality forwards now that can score goals in different ways and have different skill sets. All three are kind of uniquely different players between Pukki, Tani, and Yeboah. You've got other guys who can play wide in any kind of formation with a three forward system up top too. So again, for me, I think Eric's got some good options, like in terms of that 3-5-2 or 3-4-3. Or frankly, if he wants to go back to a 4-3-3, even and kind of surprise San Jose with something that's a little bit different. It's nice to potentially, knock on wood, be going in this game and my brain thinking that we might have almost pretty much an entire roster of healthy players.
Which feels like it's been forever since that's been the case.
It does, and that's exciting because it gets us to kind of do the show like this and kind of conjecture, what do you think it's going to be, a 3-4-3, 3-5-2, 4-3-3? And that's really nice because it's really talking about the tactics of what the coaching staff now is building up to play San Jose this weekend.
Yeah. Before we move on into looking at the rest of the league, final thoughts on this match and previewing for Seattle. What do you expect to see from both of these sides this weekend?
I really do expect a tough physical game. We know how big this game is for us. We know this is an important one and an opportunity to get some points on the road and get us going and get in the post-Leagues Cup run for making the playoffs. I think for San Jose, there's no doubt you've got guys playing for jobs, you've got a coach playing for a job, and you've got some energy from a great result in Real Salt Lake. I think the combination of those two tell me that this is going to be a gritty, tough, physical battle between two teams. I don't know if that ends up being a lot of chances and not a lot of goals, or if that ends up being a lot of chances, a lot of goals, but I do think there's going to be chances created in this game on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. There's always been a lot of interesting results between these two sides over the years, and I'm looking forward to this one, even if it is at 9:30 p.m. at night. It's a late one, so get ready to stay up late for some MLS After Dark action. Dantera and myself on the radio call starting at 9 p.m. on 1500 ESPN. The TV broadcast on MLS Season Pass, 9:30 p.m. Central Time. Looking forward to that game. Let's jump into some of the other games going on this weekend and get your predictions, Manny. Portland, Seattle. This one always a testy rivalry, Cascadia Cup rivalry between these two sides. Portland hosting this one against Seattle. What's your prediction and expectations for this match?
Where's the game?
In Portland, I believe.
Love it. The context of this game, this is probably one of the best rivalries, I think, and most authentic rivalries in the entire league. I think this rivalry, started to show Americans and American soccer how awesome this sport is. I really do think it is one of the more iconic rivalries. And you could even argue, I think it kind of even lit a spark for the country for rivalries, the sport, the energy that these fans bases create all over the country. I've got Portland at home in this one. I think it'll be a good game, but I think Portland, is going to take something from that late goal and continue to try to, have some pretty good home form.
I think I'm going to go opposite of you just because of the recent form and run between these two sides where it seems like the road team has won a number of them of late. I think I'm going to take that, and Seattle's going to want to bounce back after another loss to LAFC in the midweek. I think Seattle takes this one. Another game that I'm looking forward to, Real Salt Lake, New England Revolution. Are these two teams just kind of going opposite ways where Real Salt Lake seems to, or at least they came out and had a stinker of a performance against San Jose while New England came out and just wrecked shop against Montreal? Or is this going to be Real Salt Lake resetting at home against New England this weekend?
Well, it's exciting. I think you're bringing up a great point. Let's see where New England, if they can kind of have two great road games. I'm more intrigued by RSL, just that, I feel like Gomez was a transformational player for their club. Mm-hmm. And I think he opened up making everybody else better, it seemed like this year. And with him being sold to Europe, I'm really curious to see if they continue with that same, not only just results, but level of soccer on the field. And, it becomes even more tense for them, I feel like, because it didn't happen last weekend. And so now they're at home again against an Eastern Conference team where they're going to be expected to win. And can they, kind of put that behind them and say, no, we're still as good as we were all year? It'll be really interesting.
Yeah. I think I'm going to take a draw in this one. I'm
Oh,
hesitant.
I didn't make a choice to.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to go RSL with a bounce back here.
Okay. I'm hesitant to say Real Salt Lake after that performance on Saturday and with the way New England's been playing, but also New England just haven't been that good this season. It was one good performance against the Montreal side, so I'm hesitant to say either side will win. I'm leaning more towards Real Salt Lake will take this one at home, but I'm just going to go with the safe route and say a draw here. Final game that I'm looking forward to coming up Sunday, 1:45 p.m. on Fox. St. Louis hosting LA Galaxy. Galaxy getting a goal from Marco Royce in his debut helped them in their win at the weekend. St. Louis coming off that 4-4 draw in Portland and the next opponent for Minnesota, so we'll all be watching it. Your thoughts on this game in St. Louis?
I think it's a big one for the Galaxy in terms of, they've added a big name, a big piece, and somebody who contributed 2 goals late to help get the win at home last game. So I would say, obviously, the Galaxy have had a really big turnaround year, and these are the kind of games late in the season where you get to see where they are in terms of, are they really at the top of the West, and very similar to LAFC, where they tend to go on the road this time of the year and get results. So for me, I think this is a draw. I think St. Louis is tough at home. I still think it takes some time to actually integrate new players. And I think it's going to be a little bit harder for LA on the road than at home to do that.
Okay. I think I'm going to go take LA on the road here, just based on their performance and what's kind of at stake for them, as opposed to St. Louis, who are trying to save their season. LA Galaxy trying to hold on to that first place spot with LAFC now having, I believe, a couple games in hand behind them, just 5 points back, but they have 3 games in hand. So LA Galaxy obviously needing every single point possible to hold off their crosstown rivals. I think LA Galaxy take this one, and probably Marco Royce scores another goal or two, or at least contributes to them, because we saw what he did at the weekend and just kind of fitting in pretty nicely off the bench. We'll see how that goes on throughout the season. But Manny, another exciting weekend of Major League Soccer action. Can't wait to get it started this weekend.
Thank you. Agree. It's a big one for us. So let's get 3 points.
For sure. Loons fans, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week to discuss everything that happened in this game coming up against San Jose. Again, kickoff 9:30 p.m. Pre-match show on 1500 ESPN with Dan Terra and myself at 9 p.m. The game and broadcast start on MLS Season Pass at 9:30 p.m. on MLS Season Pass. Looking forward to it. Loons fans, thanks for tuning in. Thanks to the production staff of Grace Dearson, Evan Entler, and Kyle Hayward for putting this on every week. We'll talk to you next week, Loons fans.